No, we're gonna do that gavel again here. Let me give the second. Thank you, everyone, and welcome to tonight's City Council work session for Wednesday, January 15th, 2025. I'm going to pass it over to the City Manager, who's going to run through a presentation. First, I want to thank Councilor Denton and Councilor Blaylock, who pointed out that I had a Brit in my hair from Aurelia earlier, so appreciate the heads up on that. City Manager.
Thank you, Your Honor. So tonight we are pleased to present what we know to be the budget picture and to share that with you and to talk about how we work together to form next year's budget. So in addition to a new year and a new fiscal year and thinking about a new year, we have a new team in front of you tonight. Nathan Lonnie has served as our Deputy City Manager for Finance and Administration since July 1st. And before that, he was the Business Administrator for the schools for 5 years. And previous to being here in that position, he served for over 20 years in working for municipalities and school in the business capacity. And before that, if you can believe it, he was working, and he worked for accounting software companies for municipalities and school districts. So steeped in the right background. Next to Nathan is our relatively new and flying up to speed Deputy Finance Director, Mike Tucker. Mike comes to us with a great amount of experience both with the state, with a CPA firm, and duly noted that Mike is a CPA. He spent time at a nonprofit hospital and most recently with Liberty Mutual. And both of these wonderful guys are proud alumni of UNH. Andrew Pergel, recovering at home, is on Zoom, and he is our phone friend if absolutely necessary. So we're happy to be here. And to the extent it's possible, if we can hold questions to the end, great. If not, we understand. So tonight, here's the way the program and the presentation will go. We'll explain to folks who may be new to this process why we're here. Nathan will then delve into factors to consider, both external and internal, the drivers we know for now and things we can anticipate, where the current fiscal year sits budget-wise, and look forward to the following fiscal year. So in the past calendar year, the senior leadership team worked to develop a set of vision, mission, and values, which serve as our guiding principles and beliefs that help define our purpose, our ethics, our culture. It's meant to provide strategic direction for the organization. We've never really formally done that, at least not in my tenure, so we were proud to take that effort into consideration this year. And you'll see this throughout the budget document. You'll see it highlighted on our website. And it's something that we live as a group every day. As a reminder, last year at the beginning of your term, you set the following goals, and they relate to housing, sustainability, resilience, and climate change mitigation, inviting and engaging with the community, supporting the needs of the various constituents of the city, and understanding how best to provide options for transportation. And so with those in mind, we worked on the budget and the programs we offer. So why are we here tonight? We will review with you the factors that we consider both external and internal at the federal, state, and local level that form the backdrop for our budget development. We will identify those cost drivers we can quantify today and give projections on those we start to have a handle on. And we really need to gather guidance from you that will inform our directions to department heads as we work to formally develop the budget from here on out. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Nathan.
Thank you, City Manager, Mayor, City Councilors. I really appreciate the opportunity to stand up. My wife for Christmas bought me a treadmill that goes under my desk so that I could stand at my standing desk and walk all day long. That you open that and you know the message has been offered as lovingly as can be. And I think when she sees the replay, she's got a meeting tonight herself, she'll say, why wasn't your treadmill in place for this? I asked if I could stand only because it feels the formality feels good to me. And as I presented to your school board in all of the last 2 years, when it was substantial and somewhat rehearsed, we always did it from the podium. What this does, though, is it precludes me being able to take fair advantage of Mr. Pergel at home texting me all the good answers or insults that might come, depending on the heckling that I might deserve. I will endeavor not to talk too fast, but I know in the interest of time and getting to your deliberations that much of this is familiar to you as a council seated multiple years, and so if I speed too quickly through something and you'd like to stop and pause on it, I'm happy to do that. First off, I wanted to step back for the public's benefit as well as yours and remind folks of the process that the staff will take internally following this. Let me go back, though, and say that we appreciate that the CIP process was pushed forward and completed in the December 2nd meeting, maybe. With the CIP in hand, the staff have already started to work on projecting salaries against our collective bargaining agreements for next year. Tonight, we prepare you with all of the information that we can. We seek your guidance on the information that we can provide. Your guidance will inform the direction that we give to department heads as they embark on their budget development efforts. As we launch, it's important to note that the charter departments will be working with police and fire commissions and the school board to set priorities and plans. What follows then is internal dialogue with department heads, making adjustments as need be to try to get to the goals that you set for us. And we'll finalize the budget and publish that beautiful budget book. That'll be in the hands of the council at the end of April. The next slide was going to be reminding you of your timeline, but it became useful as we looked at it more and more to take the opportunity to remind the public about every opportunity that they have for public input and participation in this process. So tonight, obviously, we are in a budget planning session. There is an opportunity for public comment this evening. What follows this is your regular meeting on Tuesday night, when we hope that we'll see some formal guidance. There will be a public opportunity at public comment that night. What follows then are a series of charter department public hearings on their budget proposals. The police and fire, the school will open and then hold open as they continue multiple meetings, and there will be a second opportunity as well in their process. Then we will launch the process in depth with you. And on Monday night, May 12th, Monday night, May 12th, we will meet in session with the council and review the general fund elements of the budget. That'll include general government, the police department, fire department, and the school department. 2 nights later, Wednesday night, the 14th of May, we'll review enterprise and special revenue funds. Now, that'll include water and sewer, stormwater, and some other smaller entities that exist in the special revenue space. Then on Monday, the 19th, council will have a regular meeting, and we'll open in the midst of that meeting the public hearing on the budget. On the 28th of May, Wednesday, will be our council budget work session, which is an evening dedicated solely to your review and deliberation and question and answer with staff. And then on Monday, June 9th, we'll continue that public hearing at your regular meeting, and adoption of the budget will be on the agenda, and we hope that we will have delivered to you a spot that you can feel confident making those decisions that night. So with the process that we're going to follow behind us, let's talk about some of the realities that serve as the backdrop for our consideration and development of the 26 budget. First, let's talk at the more macro level, the federal level. We can share with you, and you can find it online, that the Consumer Price Index as an indicator of economic conditions. We used the November release of the CPI-U. That came out second week of December at just about 3.09%. Interesting to note that certainly it is not the same today as it was 4 years ago. Over the last 4 years, the CPI has seen a swing of about 19%. That averages out at roughly 4.75% a year. But in the last 2 years, it's been 2.39 and now 3.09 this year. Social Security Administration is a benchmark that we often use, or we can refer to. The January 2025 cost of living adjustment for Social Security recipients is at 2.5%. And it's fair for us to at least be mindful of the fact that changes in the federal administration due to begin yesterday, if not sometime soon, may certainly have an impact down the line on the cost of goods and services that are a part of what we deliver for services to the residents, as well as some of the federal funding streams that we count on from the federal government. We may see some of those alter. I guess it's important as I pause to say we're conscious of the fact that each of us has seen a measurable increase over the last year or two, and even 5, of the cost of nearly everything that we consume at home. And I wanted to make sure that I said out loud that those pressures have a similar impact on the city's costs to provide the services that we do for our residents. Moving to the state level, a little closer to home, I thought it was important to mention education funding. Some of this maybe can be good news, or at least I can minimize some of the concern We have two cases that we have been talking about, I know you're mindful of. The first that I would contemplate or talk about in this education funding conversation that always seems to be a debate, the Rand versus State of New Hampshire case deals almost exclusively with excess revenue, excess swept, excuse me. We are, for the benefit of those listening at home, we are an excess swept community. SWEPT in this case is an acronym for the Statewide Education Property Tax. The state does a calculation of what it determines to be the adequate education cost, the cost of an adequate education, you'll see in the forms. The cost of an adequate education is calculated, and that is subtracted from the total amount that the standard statewide education property tax raises in each community. And if there is a deficit, meaning if the community's state tax doesn't meet the need, then there is, in most cases, a grant that helps bridge the gap. In our case, we generate more revenue from the statewide property tax than the cost formula suggests that we need. And to be fair, I should just pause and say, we have a budget at the school side of $64 million, and the formula suggests that it might cost $9 million. So this is really only a small piece of what really is important to all of us, all of you in funding education. But in that calculation, we generate more swept revenue than the cost. Right now, we keep that, and we just use it to locally offset some of the rest of the cost of our education in Portsmouth. If this case is decided against us, if you will, we would go back to something that approximates the donor town model, and we would be sending a check to Concord. For the FY26 year ahead of us, the estimate right now has a number that would look like $387,000, which is a far cry from the $4+ million that you dealt with some almost 20 years ago when this was first an issue. We are continuing to work with the Education Coalition Communities 2.0 group, and we are monitoring that case. I'm hopeful that that looks good for us. The other case, though, is the Kentucky Valley case, the Conval case against the state. That is a far more complicated and reaching conversation about how we fund education in New Hampshire. I don't have any projections to share at this point, but I can tell you for sure that we, as you, are monitoring that case. And I don't expect right now, from the notes that have been shared with me, that we'll see an impact in the FY26 budget from anything related to the Conval decision when it comes. There's also a new state administration in Concord, and there certainly may be an impact that comes in some of the state revenues, or revenue sharing, some of the grant dollars that we count on coming from the state level. At the local level, revaluation is certainly a conversation that's fresh in the minds of all of our residents and all of you, I know. We are mindful of the impact from last year's revaluation. The shift in ratio between commercial and residential properties definitely drove additional increase in property tax bills for many of our residents. We're mindful of the fact that an increased burden is something that we should keep close at hand as we contemplate budgetary expectations and projections for a new year. The welfare department, right down the hall, they're tracking real increase in needs. Much of that concern is focused on the availability of housing, and we anticipate that you'll see an impact in our budget request to meet the growing need there. We are ever wary that some of those federal and state policy changes that we may see come down may only deepen the concern and increase those concerns or those challenges that we're facing. And then energy. Energy represents 1.8% of the current budget. It's nearly $2.6 million. And the good news that I can share with you right now is that we're in the competitive market as we speak, and we hope to secure savings that will help us as we move forward into the FY26 budget process. So those are very real factors that form the landscape for our budget development. We want to talk also about budget elements that have impacts that we can quantify now, and so we want to share those with you. In the category of the non-operating budget, I'll remind you that non-operating represents 18% of the current operating budget. So it's a small portion, but it's thankfully a piece that we know much about. With your approval of the CIP back in December, much of the non-operating is known: debt, service, capital outlay, rolling stock. We can reasonably project the county tax coming from Rockingham County, and there are a few other elements that are already known to us, so let's walk through those. Some of these slides and graphics immediately look familiar to you because it was only a month ago that we were talking about them. In the area of debt service, FY26 is projected to remain just above 8% against the metric we have in policy of keeping to not using any more than 10% of appropriations. I want to remind you that the FY26 projection, it reflects debt service from ongoing and projected projects from previous authorizations. The projects just considered starting July of 2025 are not hitting here until 27 at the earliest. And then it's important to point out, because for those that hadn't been paying attention, it's in FY 30 and 31, you see the out-year impact of when the community policing facility that we have right now in our debt forecast, when that would hit. Prior to that, any costs related to that project would have been carried as bond anticipation notes, short-term borrowing rather than bonding. So I would also remind you that the difference between gross debt and net debt, which is an element that factors in, this is a net debt analysis. These are debt service payments that are offset by, for instance, the state building aid that we receive still from the Department of Education from the state, offsetting past projects in the school department. Capital outlay is next. Capital outlay, this is straight from the CIP process. Appropriations for the capital projects that we have by category that are not bonded or borrowed but are generally appropriated. Our policy here is to budget within 2% of the prior year's budget. You can see that 8 or 9 years ago we pressed up against 2%, but this year continues to hang at 1.18%, which is essentially the same level as last year. There's a breakdown here of the categorical list, but that list is familiar to you from the CIP just completed. Next up is rolling stock. Rolling stock, staff are already working to show some restraint. It's staying essentially flat, an increase of $5,300. It represents about 2/3% of increase year over year. Rolling stock, for those that don't know, is generally vehicle inventory turn. That's across the city. These are police cruisers, the pickups driving around the school department, plowing and helping with maintenance. It's equipment at Public Works. I will note that you came through the CIP process and saw the significant fire truck apparatus that are included in the CIP there because of the nature of those vehicles and the time that it takes for us to raise and place order and receive those. But all other vehicles that we have in the city are accounted for through the rolling stock. Rockingham County tax. For what it's worth, the county's FY25 budget's $101 million. It was an increase, FY25 was of $5.4 million or 5.6%. Based upon equalized property valuation, and I think what we wanted to call out year over year is Portsmouth continues to, in a formula that is based on property valuation, we continue to be the highest contributor to the county, although from a population standpoint, we rank right now 4th in terms of the number of residents we have. Rockingham County tax, we estimate at essentially 3% year over year. It served us in good stead, and that's what we'll have in the non-operating moving forward. Other elements under non-operating, first, property and liability insurance. You know that property and liability coverage is with Primex. Primex is a risk exchange firm out of Concord, works with municipalities, schools, counties, and the like all over the state. We have separate policies here, city and school. Those we've already seen the increases handed to us for next year, 7% and 9% max that we'll see at city and school respectively. In the area of IT replacements, this again came to you as element sheets in the CIP. I will tell you that year over year there weren't huge increases by themselves in the IT replacements, but we did add, we continued cybersecurity enhancements that are a new priority that have been added over the last couple of years, but we added a public safety radio communication system. It's a number of $300,000 that you'll see repeated over the next few years. That's the impact that is here in this area of non-operating. The big category we talked about last year to some great extent is SBITA. We could all practice that one, the subscription-based information technology arrangements. This is where the city is now locating in its budget all of those subscriptions that reflect the investment we're making in cloud-based solutions to support the advancing operations that we have across the board. So these are pieces of software that empower us to interact internally and with the public. And here you'll see the subscriptions for these software licenses. One of those, but orphaned, you'll see it separately in the budget so that we can watch it and monitor it just because of its significance, are the body cameras and tasers from the police department. We talked about that. The council acted on that uniquely one night. That's about $360,000 of new money added under that category. In summary, that's what we know of the non-operating budget, and for FY26, that's roughly a fifth of the total budget, and we see that increasing at 3.5%. So next up is the operating budget. We talked a second ago about the fact that non-operating is about a fifth. It's 18%. The operating is 82%. We know some of the cost drivers in this portion of the budget: health insurance, the retirement system, and collective bargaining. Let's start with health insurance. Hello, Mason. I love that. Our health insurance comes through two statewide risk pools, very much like Primex we talked about a second ago. The school department is served by School Care, with claims administration handled by Cigna. The city, the rest of the city, is served by Health Trust, with claims administration through Anthem. Health Trust on the city side has provided us a guaranteed maximum rate of 9% increase for FY26. School Care's rates are already posted for next year, and they're increasing at a rate of 8.9%. But it's important to note that the city manages the health insurance budget through a stabilization reserve. The health insurance stabilization reserve is equipped with or it's coupled with a policy that directs that we should budget using a 10-year rolling average of the rate of increase. This separate reserve holds funds that help to moderate rate changes year over year. What it does most effectively is to help to soften the impact of major spikes that can occur in any given year out of character with other years. And so against the 10-year rolling average, the cities is 4.2%, and the schools will be 7.4%. You'll see those impacts in the proposed budget. The total cost impact estimated to somewhere in the vicinity of $930,000. The New Hampshire retirement system handed us some good news. The system has published their employer contribution rates for the next 2 fiscal years. So this same rate will apply in fiscal 26 and in 27. Categorically, you see municipal, teachers, police, and fire employees. The rates have fallen in each category. The biggest winner in this case is the municipal. None of these are huge dollars comparatively, but it's much better than facing increases. It's important, I guess I should note, most of our full-time, all of our full-time employees generally fall into one of these categories. In general government, those employees are generally under municipal. In the school department, teachers and administrators fall into the teacher category, and all other qualified eligible full-time employees fall under the municipal category. We look forward to that savings helping with the FY26 projection. Beyond that, we have some additional contractual obligations. Leave at termination is a program very much like health in terms of its stabilization reserve structure. The stabilization program for leave at termination dates back to a 1996 shift in policy that put an end to significant sick leave balances accruing over years and then having value at retirement. All folks that were participating and hired by that point continue to be entitled to that benefit, but we set up a stabilization reserve to help fund that over time. The good news is that we've fallen now to 35 employees out of the fullness of the city. It's something less than 5% of the faces that you might meet as you interact with the city, and we will level fund that for another cycle. In the area of dental insurance, we see our dental insurance provided through the same risk pools that provide health. City coverage is through Actually Delta Dental, school coverage through Cigna. Those are increasing at 5% and 4% respectively. And workers' compensation insurance for us across the city is provided by Primex, that same risk pool out of Concord. Their rates for the city increasing at 8% for next year, not more than. Collective bargaining. Collective bargaining, the council's well aware of the negotiations that are ahead of us. This cycle, 8 of our 16 unions have expiring contracts and will need to negotiate successor agreements. When you see the proposed FY26 budget, I remind you that those employees represented by one of the unsettled contracts, so the 8 that need to negotiate, their budgets will reflect step increases but no COLA. The financial impact of the negotiated COLA will be, and any other changes related to the negotiations, will be budgeted for in the collective bargaining contingency that you see as a part of the operating budget. That piggybacks on COLA, which we talked about before. The city has long utilized the 10-year rolling average of that November release. So the 3.09 release that came out in November, a 10-year rolling average on that is 2.84. So the COLA figure that we take forward into the budget process is 2.84 for us. I want to call out one identified need that the city hopes that we can include in the FY26 budget. That prospectively addresses the increasing needs of IT. It is an ever more complex threat environment that we're working in. Ransomware attacks against cities are more and more prevalent all the time. High-profile incidents can cause millions of dollars in damage and disrupt essential services. We certainly have seen that in the news. Some of the bad guys out there know enough to target municipalities, assuming that they are more likely to pay because of the challenge to restoring critical services. The position that we would like to see added is a cybersecurity specialist. It would be a full-time equivalent position. The idea right now would be to share that across the entirety of the city, that there would be funding shared by the IT department, by the school department, the police department, and by the water department and sewer department. So 60% of that would fall under the general fund, the other 40 in the enterprise. This would be an important step in helping to anticipate and provide for the defense of our organization against those kinds of external attacks. So, with all that information provided as the setting and considering that beautiful setting in Portsmouth, let's talk about where we are now as a base for launching the FY26 development. The FY25 budget under which we're operating today is $144,861,347. It represented a 4.5% increase over the prior year when approved. Reminds you again that non-operating that we talked about of that is 18%. The operating represents about 82%. And with that in mind, that's the current budget. We wanted to share with you a tidbit. In all of the financial documents that we generate, we'll be talking about those in another couple of nights. We have found value in our residents from a graphic that would speak to how your tax dollars are spent. So this graphic that you'll spend more time with later, it offers up a breakdown of how every dollar of your taxes, your property taxes, goes out the door. And so in this case, 50 cents of every dollar is related to education. The non-operating budget we were talking about and those components, that eats up about 12 cents. And then you can stair-step your way down as you consider the components of our city and its services and what portion of your tax dollar they consume. That's just informational, but again, setting a bit of background where we are right now. Those calculations are all against the FY25 and tax year 24 tax rate recently set. So, next, let's look forward to FY26, given what we have talked about tonight. Let me just say, please understand that we haven't completed a budget process, right? We are still early. We have the benefit of the CIP having been approved. We have elements that we've noted tonight that we are known or are predictable at this point. The non-operating budget, we anticipate at 3.5% right now. The operating budget, which is the other 82%, given the work completed so far on salaries and wages against our collective bargaining agreements, and considering the limited estimates that we have been able to gather from the charter departments, the operating could land around 6.7%. That would put the proposed budget at more than 6%. For comparison's sake, last year this was a 5.2% operating and 5.8% non-operating for a combined 5.7% projected total. And again, this is preliminary. I would remind you that non-operating is what it is. Of the 82%, 77% of the operating budget is in the charter departments, and they are just now undertaking their development process with the commissions and the school board. So this is very preliminary work that we've been able to pull together, but meaningful to give you the best background that we can against which to consider our budget, your budget expectations. Wanted to just offer closing thoughts and comment on the fact that as we change city policies and or adopt new city plans, which we've done some of in the last cycle, the last year, all of those are potential budget drivers today and tomorrow. and we do our best to consider those and reflect those in the budget proposals that we bring to you. Setting aside, hoping to still root for the cybersecurity specialist position just spoken about, we fully anticipate the expectation from the council of no new FTEs for FY26. And that's the background that we have that we would offer to you right now for your consideration, and are eager for questions, thoughts, and discussion about where you'd like to see us go.
In addition to thanking Nathan, Your Honor, I would like to also acknowledge Abby Mills, who is our budget coordinator, makes all the behind-the-scenes action happen. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Nathan, you coming back to the table?
Come back and sit.
All right. Assistant Mayor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Nathan, this may be a question for you, but it may be more towards the city manager and HR office. Can just a quick explanation of why we have two different healthcare offerings for the school department and then the rest of municipal government, and if it would not make sense to merge into one offering.
I'll give the high-level answer. We did look actively into merging, and it was not proven to be cost-effective, and in fact, to bring school in would have negative connotations to the whole group, correct? I'm looking at Nathan.
Of course, I sat down and cleared my head for a second, thought about a drink of water, and that was health insurance?
Yes.
Yes. Literally, the HR director secured an estimate, and it was cost prohibitive. There was not savings. It would have cost us more all around. And so that's an ongoing conversation, and a regular one that I think we do and shall have, because at some point, that may change. But the profile, claims history, and the like, when analyzed by the underwriting team, it would not generate the savings that we anticipate.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilor Tabor.
Thanks, Mayor. Nathan, 7 or 80% of the whole budget is payroll. I'm curious, what would be the increases from steps and the COLA as you put it in here? What percentage go ahead are we looking at? Same head count, just step increases and COLAs?
Slip me that, if you can remember what that number is.
And given half of the collective bargaining units have settled and half are to be settled.
Yeah, cool.
That's a bit of a
Right.
moving target.
Yeah, we don't know that.
So
But
it's an excellent question, one that the new software system that we'll put in place is going to make a whole lot easier to come around to. Across the city, we have pockets of different realities. I want to talk, just because it's familiar to me, that in the school department, I've said repeatedly over the last 3 or 4 years, we're out the door at 4.5% because of the collective bargaining agreements, because just the people and just the health, just the things that we know are going to change. And because that's a far more cyclical system, because it's very much targeted at the school district and year over year, and there aren't changes in between. The rest of the city is very much an all the time, the lights are always on, and there are changes that happen more throughout the year. And so getting a bead on exactly what that would be by itself is hard. Again, anecdotally, I can tell you that some of the collective bargaining agreements already settled. We analyzed with the HR director, we finished that this morning, she brought it to me. And in the charter departments that are already settled, police and fire, those numbers are identifiable. We had looked at some of the estimates coming out of the police department, just, again, really, very, very rough. She brought me numbers back that said, when you consider the collective bargaining agreement and the COLA, that some of those, the salaries do look like they chase into the 6%, 7% range individually. And so collectively, they certainly bring that number into the 4.5%, 5% or more, as do the teachers. I regret, because it was one of the things that I wanted to have a grip on, the way we've already started our development. It's harder to go back now and discern that, but we certainly can find that moving forward. We've been working to try to get that number,
no, I think that gives a sense.
but it's a sense, yeah.
Assistant Mayor.
Thank you. And you may not have this information ready now, but it would be beneficial to the council if we could figure out the percentage of the budget or the number associated with funded but vacant positions. And maybe if we could even get an analysis of that trend over the last maybe 5 years, I think that would be really helpful, please. Thank you.
Councilor Moreau?
Has there, as you talk about bringing on a full-time equivalent for cybersecurity, not that I'm totally for all the cybersecurity that we need, but I know that we've talked before about the fact that there's pocket departments that kind of act on their own. You're saying this one would be citywide. Is there a way to even more merge all of it so that there's, one central cyber control for all the departments and there's not multiple people doing the same job just for different departments?
I can take that. I think that would be an ideal situation from a management perspective. I think we have to navigate the two commissions and the board. Fire Commission operates under the city side IT, so this would not pertain to the Fire Commission. But something we've talked about, and school is on a different platform. Nathan, you can speak to that.
Yeah.
And we'd want to make sure that we don't run afoul of or compromise eligibility for some of the police department's accreditations, CGIS, CALIA, of the like. But
Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Moreau, for that. I think there's a lot of desire to have, to look within the collective units of those departments to see if there is that FTE within all of those departments that is capable and able to do that role before we would add another FTE on top of that without having a singular administration with regard to cybersecurity. Councilor Cook?
Thank you, Your Honor. This may sound like a naive question, but I want to know what our legal obligations are with regard to health trust and school care as far as using those suppliers for healthcare.
In terms of the contract, is that what you're
Yes,
asking?
contractual agreements, and what is the state requirement?
I do not know the answer to that, but we can endeavor to find one. Nathan might have some information.
I think there are currently 3 pools, and so if I, just for the public's sake, just back up 30 seconds and say, a risk pool is, the risk pool is not really insurance, it just acts as though it's insurance. We would generally suggest that, oh boy, I don't want to confuse people, but we are essentially self-insured. We make contributions, all of us, multiple municipal entities, again, cities, counties, towns, school districts. We make contribution to this pool. Pool. The pool then uses those dollars to secure claims administration, wellness programming, and co-insurance, reinsurance to make sure that they protect the pool. And although the Anthem or the Cigna may be processing the claims, the pool actually is funding the claims. They have a pattern of performing well over time, and there are 3. There's Health Trust, which is working with Anthem, that we are working with here in the city. There's School Care that works with Cigna, that the school department has, and there's Interlocal Trust, which works with Harvard Pilgrim. If you consider their ages and how well they have worked over time to gather additional entities to work with them, they are in that order of size: Health Trust, School Care, and Interlocal Trust. But the performance has been good, and they are loyal partners to the municipal arena, so they support ongoing professional development, help us understand new laws when they come out, et cetera. There's nothing under law that I'm aware of that would preclude the city from contemplating a different arrangement, a very much self-funding arrangement like a business might. We could also explore commercial insurance, and I haven't, in 20 years, I haven't ever actually dug deep into trying to find one, but when we did so in the property and liability realm, we found that it was far more expensive, and it was driven very much by everything that they would manage to exclude in our coverage rather than the all-encompassing "we got you," which is what the pools have as kind of a mission. So,
Follow up to that?
Just a quick one. I love pools. I've dealt with these
Yep.
before. And interestingly enough, this was my mother's job, managing a pool of funds for 157 school districts, shockingly.
Preaching
So-
to the choir, as I described this. Yes, thank you.
I'm very familiar with these. Have we looked at the other pools, especially since we're in a contract negotiation year? I think it might be valuable to look at the interlocal trust, or just to see what the prevailing rate is. I know that health insurance rates are climbing, and unfortunately, that's just across the board. So I'm not surprised by these increases, but it might be valuable to at least look for point of comparison if we can.
Yeah.
And going to Council Bowick, just real quick on what have we done to investigate self-funding insurance?
The short answer to that is I don't think we're big enough. We're not eligible.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the benefit of the pool, that we get all of the pluses, the wellness programming and the like that comes with that because of the economies of scale. But honestly, outside of that model, I don't know that we've done had any real consideration of setting ourselves up and pooling our resources and covering ourselves in a self-insured way. There are examples of that, and I think we could ask those questions and ask what other municipalities, if not in New Hampshire, certainly in New England, have had.
So on that, especially with collective bargaining, to understand where that maybe, where the size breaks even for that, and then some of the areas for potential savings or incentivization programs that exist within the self-funding model that would not be available in the pooled insurance model would be helpful on a go-forward basis as we're having the collective bargaining discussions.
Thank you. Okay.
Councilor Bowick?
Thank you, Your Honor. And thank you, Nathan, for your presentation, and thank you, Abby and Pergel, if you're listening, for all your work. And I'm not going to sugarcoat this. I mean, we just went through reevaluations. All the residential are getting a lot more pressure on them cost-wise. It's a tough year for a budget. Given our state and federal climates, I don't think we're going to be seeing any checks written sent to us soon. And I understand all the increases with COLAs and steps and stuff that's already kind of built into the budget. I think a 0% increase should be the goal, and I think anything above inflation would be unacceptable. I don't see any reason why. I don't think we can put that on the residents of Portsmouth. But I'm just going to, those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Councilor Bowick. Other questions? Councilor Lombardi.
Kind of a follow-up on the assistant mayor's thoughts on open positions. I guess I'd like to understand the trends over multiple years of how many positions do we, as a trend, do we have every year? Because if we are, I mean, they might be in various departments, but if we have, I don't know, 10 open positions consistently year after year, I wonder if there's a way to deal with that.
Love that. Thank you very much.
Councilor Cook?
I have a question related to staffing as well. Thank you. Given the significant decrease in the census this year at the high school, I'm particularly wanting to look at whether or not we will be having a decrease in the number of positions there based upon retirements or early retirements, or and what the planning is there to address that significant change.
Any other questions, Council? Councilor Tabor?
Yeah, just, I wanted to inform the council that I have a motion under my name for Monday proposing a 3.5% increase target. Some may think that's too high, some may think that's too low, but that's the debate we can have.
Thank you, Councilor Tabor. Without any other questions or comments, we'll go to a public comment in a second. I'd ask, we'll we don't have any formal guidance that comes out of a work session, and so Councilor Tabor will have that discussion on the, as you know, on the Tuesday. Oh, yeah, totally forgot about that. Would have shown up here on Monday. Hopefully not wearing a beret. But when it comes to, the charter departments and the overall budget process that goes forward, I'd ask everyone to think, especially given revaluations where we saw residential take up more than the commercial aspect or commercial property, taking a bigger chunk of that pie, to think how we can do the added and necessary work with the same amount of folks. The FTE around cybersecurity, those are one of those places where we're going to ask, how is that department and those multiple departments, how can they come together and create one department, obviously through the charter and all of the legal work that would have to occur from that. But I think the residents and ourselves as a municipality, school, fire, police, should be thinking about how can we be as efficient as possible. And I think it was last year when we were talking about things like, the outdoor classroom coordinator, it was a position and then it turned into a stipend, things of that nature where we can continue to invest in the employees that we have while making sure that the long-term operating costs of the city remain manageable, are things that this council is going to be looking at, as are every resident that got the tax bill conveniently the day before Christmas. So there's a heightened sense of this. I know that we focused on that last year. The sense and focus is going to be heightened this year as well. So with that, Councilor Nathan,
Yes.
I almost demoted you.
Demoted, I don't know that. I want to follow up. I have a team at the table with me, but I'm also backed by a team of 50 others, and I'm reminded that before I get too excited about health insurance, it is a negotiated item in nearly all of our collective bargaining agreements. So as the mayor was referencing, as we're at the table and in negotiations and the go forward considers the possibilities, it would not be something that we could elect to do unilaterally at any point because it's included in all of those, but certainly is a part of the ongoing negotiation conversation. So thank you for the
good reminder.
Thank you for the reminder from the field.
Peanut gallery. All right, so we're going to open it up to, unless there's another, Councilor Tabor.
Just one last question. I wonder if we could get the number of retirements by department that we see coming up, and what that trend has been over the past couple of years. Because those retirements, maybe with better IT, some of those retirements we can redistribute that work or do it more efficiently.
Thank you.
And with that, we'll open it up to public comment.
Good evening. Petra Huda, 280 South Street. Holy moly cannoli, you have a lot of work in front of you. Just looking at this increase in percentage, oh my God. So, here we are discussing FY26, and the taxpayers have not seen or heard anything on the FY24 financial results. Did we have a surplus? Did we have a deficit? Have the auditors been in? What is our status? This is the first time we have not seen anything or heard anything about unaudited results. Did I miss it? So my first question is, how can you move forward with new numbers without knowing what happened? Next thing, councilors, per RSA 4131 and the city charter, the administration of the city, the council has a fiduciary duty to report to the taxpayers how you spent the tax dollars. FY24, how did you spend it? We have seen no reports, we have seen nothing. Generally, this should go through the Audit Committee, which has not had a meeting since January 5th, 2023. Is there a problem there? And when will we see or hear anything on that? The next thing I'd like to ask is, as far as moving forward on this, I'm asking you to, I guess, read again the letter that came from Mr. David Hoodlin. And I call your attention to the bottom, where he's asking you that you're the only ones that can influence the taxes and the budget. And I'm going to just read this verbatim to get it across. Since you as city councilors can't influence or challenge the assessments, the one key variable that you have control over is a city operating budget. The mayor made a comment that 4.5 increase was considered reasonable. That's concerning. As he stated in a prior letter, the compounding impact of year-over-year increases of 2.4% are crushing taxpayers. Our budget keeps growing. We can't continue to simply take prior year departmental budgets as a starting point, then negotiate the percentage increase. We must do what the private sector does. We do zero-based budgeting. Does that sound familiar? Like somebody brought it up 5 years ago? And then negotiate. We must do what the, let's see, I lost my place. We must not take prior year's baseline as a justification for a new budget. As stewards of the hard-earned tax dollars, we expect you to scrutinize every budget and submission. Now, the next thing I want to ask about is the process here. Are we to expect guidance, Councilor Table just answered that, of 3.5%? So my question is, are you going to start with your base, or are you going to start with zero? The next thing I'd like to bring to your attention is, do you really need more than you spent in FY24? But that's hard to estimate because we don't know how much we spent in FY24 unless you have privy to the statements, and the public doesn't. It is your fiduciary duty to let us know where we are as far as the end of the year, and also to use that as a starting point. So I'm asking you, how is this going to affect what you're going to do going forward? Everybody is watching, and it's 6.13. Holy moly. That's all I could say. Thank you.
Thank you, Petra. Just given the fact that we set the agenda today, we will have the unaudited results from CLA.
Actually,
the audited results presented from CLA on Tuesday's meeting.
Esther Kennedy, 41 Pickering Ave. First, I want to thank you because I'm starting to hear some nice things here. I'm hearing people actually think about the budget and think about how it's going to affect our community. As you process this budget, I want you to remember that this group of people, except for our new people working in the business office and our attorney sitting here, have raised in the past and authorized 44.2 positions, new positions. This group of people have increased the budget by $20 million. And this group of people, as I've asked, when positions come forward, please evaluate them. What is our need? Why do we need to keep that position? I'm in my own budget season in my work, and that's what we have to do. And we have to authorize and look at our population in our schools. And your population has gone down. like every community in this state and most communities in the United States. What does that look like? I'm not here to make that judgment. I'm here to ask you to evaluate it. I'm also here to ask you to evaluate our infrastructure. We have some major things that have gone on in other states because people didn't. And I'm asking you to look at it. I want you to look at our 2 sewer treatment plants and the fact that Lonza has now pulled out of one of them in helping the improvements. I want you to look at the fact that the plant out on Pierce Island is not taking care of its own sludge. I want you to look at these plants and see, with all the growth that you have added, and you have changed the zoning laws, this group of people, to add that growth, does our infrastructure of our sewer treatment plant cover that growth? As you think of the budget, I want you to think of our Superfund sites. Coakley, our Toland site that I know is in Dover. However, we know there's migration from that site to our water. How are we taking care of that? How are we making sure as we move forward with our increased water demand that we're going to have safe water? Along with that, I think you should be aware of the Jones Ave site that has the same top, the same stuff buried, and the same sides. What is happening over there? These are all high-cost items that you need to be aware of. What is happening to our lawsuits? How does that fit into this budget? Our Boyle, our Canes out there, and who knows what other lawsuits that I might not even know about. These are all big ticket items that we can no longer deal with this little stuff here, hiring consultants to do projects and then not follow through on it, hiring transportation projects and being told the same thing that we were told 12 years ago. You folks have to take this stuff serious and this infrastructure. We have a police station that we know and we've been told by many that we have mold. How are we taking care of the safety of our employees in that station? Do we need to build the Taj Mahal of police stations? I don't believe so. I heard many of you talk about going to Dover and seeing that. And I was actually up in Dover for a student, and they do a nice job. I ask you to think about what is happening to our tax rates for the residents versus commercial. I ask you, as you are looking at this budget, which is probably one of the most serious budgets we've had in history, what happens knowing that we just lost a lot of federal funds? And we have the access to those federal funds to make changes, and those are no longer there. So you need to think about how important it is to keep programs that were under those federal funds, and how sometimes it's sad, but we're going to have to let them go. Not only in the schools, but also in our community. And as one of the counselors, Mr. Blaylock, just said, I do not believe any of us are going to be receiving that kind of funding from the federal government. Lastly, tonight we were talking about insurance rates and insurance. That's a hard conversation. But insurances for everything are going up substantially, and the taxpayers are going to feel it. I know personally, whenever there's a hurricane, I know I'm going to see a huge amount of insurance increase because I own a marina. I don't have a choice. The taxpayers are not only going to feel the pain of the taxes going up, but you levied and came up with on the 24th of December. With all their insurance rates are also going to go up. So now you have produced some housing, and I congratulate you on that. However, is it really housing for all? I don't think so. The housing that's being produced is for upper middle class and wealthy. We have a few units out on Lafayette, thanks to Councilor Hood, or Peter Hood and myself going to court and keeping that. But you haven't produced the housing that we really need to be a successful community. And those people are going to rely on landlords. And the last thing I leave with you, if you raise the budget, 54% of our population who are not paying taxes, but they're paying rent, will have a hard time, and they don't even know it. At least the people that are paying taxes know that the tax bill went up substantially. But landlords have to still pay their insurance, and they have to pay those taxes that you set up. So you folks have a huge thing to do, and I understand it's going to be really hard. We're going to have to look deep, and you're going to have to change some of what we've done and really look at what every penny means to the community that we live in. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. Any other speakers? With none, I will, just going to pull out the, where was that on? Slide with all the meetings. Yes, we will have the opportunity again to speak on the 21st, February 4th, February 11th, the 12th, March 4th, May 12th, May 14th, May 19th, May 28th, and June 9th in order to have the input on the budget. We encourage everyone to speak on the budget. This is a collective document that we expect your input, rely on that. If you don't have the time, sometimes these meetings are when you're putting kids to bed or trying to get them fed. We do read all of the emails that come in on this, and we'll expect to hear from lots of you going forward. So great job, Nathan, up there at the dais or the podium. Appreciate all the hard work that has gone into this document. There is, to paraphrase some of the speakers, a lot of work to do on this budget, given the headwinds that we're seeing, the state, feds, and our own pocketbooks at home. So we look forward to that work, and this is the beginning. So thank you very much. Good night, Portsmouth.